Fast Growth Mastery, Cultivating a Company Culture of Growth with our speaker, Chris Dyer. Delve into the art of fostering a company culture designed for explosive growth. Chris Dyer, renowned for his expertise in company culture and the nuances of remote work, brings forward insights from a storied career marked by achievements celebrated by industry-leading publications. Recognized as a top authority on leadership and culture, the insights from Chris's acclaimed books on company culture and remote work underscore a deep grasp of organizational intricacies. With a unique mix of depth, wit, and relatability, this session will shed light on a roadmap that has consistently elevated businesses in their productivity, efficacy, and profitability. Engage with the session and unlock the techniques poised to boost your company's path to exceptional growth. First of all, let me welcome you to the show. Thank you for taking the time to be on the Global Economic Advisory Network.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So we have the show specifically to help entrepreneurs hit their marks within the next 90 days, right? So most of them are on this sprint, but this is a wide spectrum of different entrepreneurs, some of which are solopreneurs, maybe small businesses, and then others are at a C-level, executive suite type of situation. So if we could just keep that in mind as we're framing these questions, or as I'm asking you these questions, but let's start from the lower end of the spectrum. If someone is just starting out and they actually don't have the teams in place, how could they rapidly hire people who would contribute to a fast growth in their company? Or how do they set up the culture at the beginning of the startup for anyone who's, pre-seed right now?
If you're just starting out, you need to be really clear about what it is you want your company to look like. What is it you envision it to be? Now, it might change later, and that's okay. But you can't just hire people and try to do all this stuff and say, I'll figure that part out later, right? You have to be very clear in imagining, I want a company where we take care of each other, or it's a family environment, or I want a high-paced, high-stakes, cutthroat, highly competitive culture. I mean, whatever the answer is, as long as it's not toxic. I mean, there are lots of different types of cultures. So what makes sense to you? Because if you can imagine that environment, it's sort of like, what kind of party do I want to have? Right? Am I having an Oktoberfest theme party? Am I having a horror party? Am I having, what's the theme? Right? If you tell people what they're supposed to do when they show up, they'll do it. If you just say, hey, everyone, having a party, just show up on Saturday, and you don't tell them what time, what to bring, how to dress, what to do, you're not going to get very many people who want to come to your party. And when they do, they certainly aren't going to have any fun, because they don't know what the heck is supposed to happen. Right? Yeah. This is why a birthday party is the most popular party we have, because everyone knows exactly what's going to happen, when it's over, what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to behave. And so it's the same thing in a culture. Sure. We want to create the environment. We want to imagine the entire thing that you want your company to be. And again, remember, it can change. It will change. You will make shifts and pivots and all of that. But at least when you start talking to people, you can figure out, are they the kind of person who's going to be happy in the kind of culture you want to create? Will they be happy? Will they thrive? And have they ever in the past thrived in an environment like the one you think of? Right? If everything on their resume is, I've worked in big companies with big infrastructure and slow moving processes, and now you want them to come to your startup, that's not going to work. Right? You want to find really Jedis, these incredible people who will come in, who've done startups, who've been in these environments, who know how to be agile and help you.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And honestly, I don't think, when you're first starting out, you're really focused on the mission of your company. You're focused on getting the product, proving that you have the market and all of that. And the culture is almost an afterthought, right? Especially if you're kind of you could feel as if you're desperate to get help, because at least with the example of solopreneurs, it's almost like, I just need someone to help me, so let me get a team that I could potentially delegate to. And I don't think that's an immediate thought of, is this a vibe? Is this really someone I could align with? Is this someone I want to be long term creating this project with? So I think it's a really solid point that's often overlooked. So thank you for pointing that out. And then, so say in the same, like, sort of slowly moving up the scale of the spectrum of audience, assuming that as the project evolves, they might have still a constraint on their budget, which often leads, at least from what I've recognized, to outsourcing certain things or working remotely to whoever's available at within that price range for some of the projects, right? So the question is, how do you maintain this culture in remote work, or when you have employees who are working only remotely?
Right. So when we were talking about culture inside remote, and it depends. Like, is everyone remote? Are some people remote? Right? Are some people hybrid? All of that changes the complexity of what we're trying to do. But again, it goes back to what I said. We have to be very intentional about who we are and what we're trying to do, and then we have to find ways to reinforce, reward, and talk about how we're trying to create that culture, how we're trying to talk about that culture. And so, if we're very clear and we're talking about that, then it won't matter that they're working remote. As long as we're transparent and talking about it at a very, very high level, that we can get those people on board and to do that work. And honestly, using those kinds of fractional people, part-time people, outside consultants, all of that is one of the best strategies that a startup and a young company can use, because one of the problems with a company when you start off is that the people you end up attracting and getting to help you launch what you're trying to do aren't necessarily the people you want with you forever. And they aren't necessarily the people who are going to help you grow to the next level. They're the right people for the messy startup phase. And then when you start to get a little more sophisticated, suddenly you kind of need different people. And a lot of entrepreneurs make a mistake of promising the world and thinking about those people as forever employees. And they're probably, most of them are not going to be. And
Yeah.
so we want to think about them as hey, this is the right people on the bus for the journey right now. And then at some point, some of those people got to get off the bus and you got to let new people in. And that's how we keep our culture going and fresh and working for us so that we can rapidly grow.
Yeah, that's interesting. We have another expert who's an anthropologist. Actually, he's a professor at Fordham, and he's was also honing in on this fact that culture is evolving. It's not a stagnant thing. So having these moving parts of people who are with you at the beginning and come out of it, just it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. I wonder. I mean, I imagine a lot of entrepreneurs maybe make that mistake, if it is a mistake or not. But what are other common pitfalls or mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they're looking to implement this growth centric culture? Or maybe prior to that, let's get to the basics of what actually growth centric culture contains and entails for a business, and then where they usually drop the ball in trying to create it.
Yeah, so we can be good at a lot of things, but you can really only have one number one focus. So are you a customer service focused company? Are you an employee focused company? Are you a sales driven company? And at different parts, different times of your company's, time, you may be different things at different times, and that's okay. So, but if you're going to be a sales focused organization, that means that everyone is thinking about sales, everyone is driving sales, everyone should know what the sales number is and what we're trying to do. And that is the most important. That is more important than the product working correctly. That's more important than happy customers. It's more important than happy employees. And there are times where that is totally the appropriate way for a company to be driven, because Without those sales over that period of time, you may not exist anymore. And we
Right.
can later on become customer service focused or employee focused or whatever as we mature as an organization. But one of the things that people get wrong, entrepreneurs almost always get wrong, is that in their brain, they know what the goal is, they know why it's the goal, and they don't tell most of the employees. So they expect them all to be, this is a sales focused organization, but no one knows what the goal is. No
Mm.
one knows that we need to get to X dollars or X amount of new clients so that we can then get the next round of funding we need, or that we can pay the bills, or we can go hire that next salesperson, or whatever, insert the blank. We need to get to this point so we can do these things. They don't tell people that. They just tell them, well, we need to get to $1 million. And everyone's like, yeah, that'd be nice for you, buddy. You can go drive your Ferrari, but why do we need to get to a million? I mean, I want my job. I don't really care whether or not
Right.
we get to a million. But if
Right.
it's like, hey, we're going to get to a million because then we can get the next round of funding, and that's going to help us grow. That's going to help us do all these other things. People can get behind that.
Right.
And so transparency is one of the biggest areas that entrepreneurs, CEOs, people starting out a new company, they woefully fail at that.
Yeah. What do you think is the root cause of entrepreneurs not communicating to their team? Like, have you explored that aspect of it, and or what have you found from it?
Sure. So there's a certain amount of like being ignorant, not knowing that how powerful it can be. There are some people who just don't realize if they did that they will be more successful. There are some that are afraid if they share that information that people or employees are going to use that against them, which usually isn't the case. I mean, we at my companies we share our P&L with everybody. Every single person in the company gets a copy of the P&L, and we talk about it every single month. And you
Mm.
would think people tell me that I can't believe you do that. Don't people come back and ask you for raises and more money and this and that when they see you're making money? And I go, no, because they all understand what the goals are. They all understand what we're trying to do. We're explaining to them the big picture. And so they're not
Mm.
coming to us with short-term asks because we have explained to them what we're trying to do, and they know how they're going to benefit in the long term from
Yeah.
us being successful. Right. And so
Mhm.
one nice month doesn't mean they all start coming asking me for a raise. So there's fear, right? So ignorance, there's fear. And then there's sometimes a bit of cockiness or th- thinking they're better than everybody else. Meaning,
Mm.
like, I need to know, but they don't need to know that. You know,
Mm.
I'm the entrepreneur here. I'm the inventor. I'm the one who started this company. These little peons down here don't need to know that. And
Right.
unfortunately, those are the worst kinds of people to work for. They sometimes succeed, but they generally fail at,
Yeah.
yeah, things that should work because they are not really integrating their people into this holistically.
Or they have a really high turnover rate, right? Like people are always
Very high,
mad at
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, they waste all that money on recruiting and training instead of, putting that money back into the company.
Yeah. It's really interesting because as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, that's how I run my ship at home. Like your business is your family. You have to make sure all the kids are on the same page because they're less likely to ask you for things because they understand the big picture. And it's just resonated in a different way. I actually never saw it like that before, but it is very much like family. Business is like your business
Yeah,
that you're running
yeah,
is your family. So
absolutely.
so what about from the other end of the spectrum, right? So they already have these systems in place. Say there's organizations that want to begin building culture in their workplace. Let's start with like, I don't know, someone who's got 50 to 100 employees because that's manageable. It's not too sub segmented, right?
Mm.
What is your advice for them to not like have this, hey guys, we're going to have a retreat kind of feel, but a very organic way of implementing this in their business.
Well, I mean, we can go back. So there are 7 pillars, and I have this in my book, The Power of Company Culture. The second edition is coming out on October 31st. And there are 7 pillars that we see in great cultures. We talked about transparency already. That's number one.
Mhm.
One of the other pillars is listening. And so, are you actively doing things to ask your employees? Are they being heard? What do
Mhm.
they need? Hey, what do you think we should do about improving our culture? Should we go have a retreat? Is that what we need to do? Is this
Mhm.
something we need to work on inside of each team and set goals and work on over a period of time? Do we need to just be very clear about our values and talk about that more often and make sure that we're living those values? I mean, your employees will give you a lot of ideas about what they want. And I would say it's about effort. So even if what you do is feels cheesy and you feel like you could be doing more, just start with doing with what you can, because
Mhm.
something is better than nothing,
Right.
right? And then take the temperature of your team and say, okay, we did this thing. What else could we do? Could we have done that better? And just keep building on that, right? Because activity towards culture, towards building a better culture, sincere, intentional, you really mean it activity will build you a lot of rapport and a lot of grace from your employees.
Yeah. So, okay, the takeaway there is, or at least the takeaway for me was, giving your employees a voice, right? And not it's I mean two-way communication. You're giving them the voice, you're giving them the platform to express themselves, but you're also listening to what they're saying and implementing it. So there's this trusted relationship that you're building, and eventually that will lead to change in your company culture. Okay.
Yeah, people want to be heard. People want to be listened to, and you can't always do what they want. We can't
Mhm.
always, take that back. But we can show them. We can give them the opportunity to be heard, and we can show them that we heard them. And we
Yeah.
can, and sometimes we can make a change, and sometimes we can explain why we can't make a change, and sometimes we can explain why that's impossible, right? Or give them the opportunity to go back and try again.
So what do you suggest for companies that have so many employees that, surely there's a lot of requests, or, this is a lot of data. If you're collecting feedback from all of the employees, that's a lot of data to sift through and I guess segment and try and make something of it. How do you manage those types of conversations?
Well, I mean, that's the job of the chief people officer or the CHRO or whoever they put in charge of that, right? Is to make sure they are collecting that data, make sure they are talking to leaders, they are talking to employees, and that they're getting a really good understanding at a high level and then also at a very personal level about what people really want, what they need, how can they make an impact. And then
Mm.
it's about coming up with varied approaches. So one of the mistakes that a lot of my bigger clients make is they look at the data and the data says, well, the average employee wants this. Well, that means that your solution will only work for the average employee and it's only
Mm.
going to work for a certain group of people.
Mm.
What we want to do is create options. So if we look at the data and say, well, people generally want these 3 things, can we give them these 3 things as a choice? Right?
Right.
Some people want, you know, a 4-day work week. Some people want remote work. Some people want, like, can we give them the option to say, pick one, right? Pick the one that works best for you. And I'm just kind of made up that silly example, but there, it's sometimes I've looked at a company who they lost a ton of people. They brought me in and lost all these people after they announced their new benefits program. And it was because they went back and looked at what the average was and they offered what the average employee said they wanted, which meant that something like 75% of the people didn't get what they wanted
Mm. Mm.
because 25% represented an aggregate of all
Right.
of the different things people wanted. So we went back and said, how about we offer them 3 different types of benefit plans, 3 different ways to look at it? And then suddenly everybody was happy. It
Yeah.
didn't cost the company any more, right? It was no sweat out their bag. But it was about giving choice, right? So that more people can get aligned to what works for them.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, and I can understand how someone who doesn't have a professional doing this would very easily just take the average, right? Because that's the easiest way for them to try and understand the data. So one, if you don't have someone, look for someone, whether they're fractional or not, to help you with this. And if you do have someone, use this quick tip of having options as opposed to one solution, one size fits all, because that doesn't work. So let's get into maybe why someone should do this. Like, what are the actual results that you've seen in your experience? Like, how has this changed businesses because because of the productivity, the results, like the general uh, investment in their people? Has it, drastically reduced costs for the company? What is the main benefit that you're seeing companies walk away with after they've improved their company culture?
Yeah. So when we have a great company culture, I believe that the power of company culture is what allows us to have the business owner and the senior leaders and the all executives to get what they want, which is typically productivity, performance, and profits, right? And allows the employee to get what they want: personal satisfaction, connection, professional satisfaction, feeling like they have a security and they're going to get a paycheck, work-life balance. I mean, all these things that they want as a priority to them. Only when the culture is working, when it's a great culture, can everybody who is, when I say everyone, I mean everyone who is an actively positive participant in this equation, right? Obviously, there can have some terrible employee who you need to get rid of. That this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who are actively there to do something good. Everyone in that ecosystem then can have what they want. Okay. Now, beyond that, it is 100% proven over and over and over again. When you have a great culture, you outperform your competitors. They are more profitable. They meet their values goals. They tend to be more diverse. They tend to have more innovation in their company. They have lower turnover than their competitors in their space. I mean, they have higher customer satisfaction scores, higher employee scores. Their brand is considered better in the marketplace. The list goes on and on and on because culture reverberates, right?
Mm.
I mean, this is a really simple example, but I mean, did you ever have a friend like in high school or in college, and like when you went over to their house, their family was just, it was so great to be there. They were they really seemed to like each other and love each other, and you're like, how the heck does this happen? Why is my house not like this? Right? They're all reading books and hugging each other, and they're like, it was like the best environment ever, right? Like you wanted to be around there, you wanted to hang out at their house. That's a little bit of what's happened when you have a great company like that, right? People want to be there. They tell everyone about it. Your customers can feel it. Your vendors feel it, right? And that is, in a way, it makes your people unpoachable. It is like a
Mm.
superpower, right? It
Mm.
is really hard for someone to poach out one of your people when you have a great place to work, and that is
Yeah.
more important. We see this consistently today. That is more important than how much they get paid. Culture and flexible work, so having remote, hybrid, something like that, are more important for people to stay than how much they get paid.
Yeah,
Think about that.
I believe that. I mean, I can test testify to the fact that I don't want to work in an environment that doesn't make me feel happy. Like, who does? Why would that make sense? So, okay. It's interesting that you said this idea of it being a superpower, right? Like you by having this culture, it almost makes it impossible for other competitors to poach your employees, which is really important because if you've taken the time to train and you've invested, and I mean that's just, there's so many opportunity costs there that aren't factored in to the bottom lines in most businesses. So understanding that by having these strong cultures, you're maintaining your family, you're reducing the costs on having to train new people and start over, and all of this other hoopla that comes with when someone leaves the company. The other thing that you mentioned was, occasionally you have these bad apples in a company. right? And sometimes, so they're there in every company. And my question is actually, is it your job as a business owner to convert them into good apples, or do you need better hiring processes to maintain, like the alignment with the existing culture that you're creating, or what is how do we see those bad apples as indicators for our actions, is what I'm getting at.
I've always taken the approach that if somebody is not working out, that it is my fault and it is my job to figure out what's going on, right? As their leader, as their manager, or whatever. And so I start down a process of, are they in the right job? Are they doing the activities they're good at? Right? Am I asking them to do things that align with what their strengths are? Okay. Listen, you put me in a job where I'm doing my weaknesses all day, and all of a sudden I'm a bad apple, right? And
Mm,
then and you put me in doing things that I'm great at and I love doing, and all of a sudden I'm the star employee.
yeah, that's true.
So from a character standpoint, I would never sabotage a company or do terrible things or be, whatever. I mean, there are people that can get that desperate where they act that way. Not That's not cool. But to start, like, if they're doing the wrong job and they're doing the wrong activities, that's got a lot of an impact. Do they really have the capabilities to do what I'm asking them to do? Did I maybe mishire? Did I think that they were capable of doing this and maybe they're not? Right? Is this a misfit? And if that's the case, then you got to let them go.
Mm,
Right? Or can you get them the training? Is it possible that you can provide them the training to get them where they need to be?
mm,
That's a decision only everybody can make, one person at a time.
yeah.
And as you go down that list, if you find that all of these things are okay, right? And it's not any of these things, and you get down to the very, very base level, that maybe this person is now, maybe they're having some personal problem. Okay. So is there something we can do to better support them? I mean, I've had situations, I've had thousands of employees. We've had situations where people were causing problems and we ultimately figured out they were in the middle of a divorce, right? And that was all of their behaviors and all of their everything they were doing was just a reaction to their frustration, what was happening in their divorce.
Mm,
And so we were able to help them get some counseling, get some coaching, and they ended up being okay, right? And they came back and they ended up being a great employee.
mm,
But as you go down that list, like if there isn't anything you can solve and you just figure out that they're a jerk, you got to do everything you can as quickly as you can to get rid of them,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it is up to you. I believe it is up to you to make sure that it's nothing you can't make a change. That it's not your fault with how you positioned them. It's not your fault for putting them in the wrong position. It's not your fault for not giving them the right training. And
Right.
then, or is it their fault because they're having a problem, but you can help them with, right? And then the last piece is they're just a jerk. They're just one of those people. They exist. Get rid of them quickly.
Yeah, I really like that approach. And, as I'm sure you had him on your show as well. Rep Power was also talking about accountability, so that pulls into this like wholeheartedly. You have to be responsible for what's happening in your business, and if you overlook it, or if you brush it off as if it's just the one exception, it's likely to show its rearing head again. Like if you haven't solved the problem, if you haven't recognized where you messed up, the pattern's gonna consist. So I like this approach for that reason. Um, so okay, we have a couple more questions that we can squeeze in here. I wanted to ask, if an entrepreneur could only choose one of the 7 pillars from your book, what would be the one that they should implement for, if their goal is growth, like the fastest growth they possibly could have in their business?
Yeah, I guess if we're focusing on growth, we talked about transparency already, so they've already been exposed to that one. That might have been the one I picked, but I'm going to pick a different one just because we've already talked
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
Um, so certainly recognition. You need to have a very clear and designed way to recognize people for doing a great job, and it really should be bottom up. That means that it's not the manager's job to walk around and tell people good job all day. And if the manager doesn't do it, then no one ever gets recognized. So we created a program where in our Slack, we had a water cooler room and we train people. Hey, it's your job. If you see someone do something great, if they helped you out, they did a favor, go into that room and say, hey, thank you, Tom. And we would say, green flag. You really helped me with that client report today. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is online would jump in. Way to go, Tom. Green flag. Way to go. Way to go. And it was like just this way to pat each other on the back. Managers could do it, but it
Yeah.
wasn't on the manager. It wasn't like if the manager forgot, well, then now, I'm never recognized, right? But this is a way for everyone to keep everyone up to date on who's doing a great job, who's recognizing. We didn't put gift cards around it or rewards or something. There are some really great rewards programs for really big companies where I think that works, that it's a really important way to do it. Like Caesars Entertainment, I have a whole case study on how they did it. But for the average company, especially if you're in a startup mode, you just need to be constantly finding ways to recognize people and make sure they're recognizing each other, right? Because being in a startup, trying to grow is hard. This is not easy stuff. We're going to literally bang our head up against the wall 5,000 times a day. So if we're not thanking each other and recognizing each other for whatever small wins can happen today, it's going to get pretty desperate in that office, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to be better at recognizing, celebrating whatever wins we got that day, you know?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, I guess it's difficult for you to choose from the seven pillars, and now I'm seeing why, because it's like you can't have one without the other. The transparency gets everybody on the same page, aligned to like, the same objective. And then this aspect of, hey, you're doing good, you're doing great. We're in it together. I can see how that starts to build towards a culture where they want to be a part of it. And, it even ignites the initiative to reach out to someone who's not getting recognized, right? Even within the team. So it's not just a manager's job to check in. If they're seeing that no one else is giving them credit, it's that family building. Like it's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, and you can build on that because one of the other pillars is the positivity pillar, a pillar. So that one says we should focus on what's working first. We should focus on our strengths first. And
Yeah.
so that adds another level of like, we're going to recognize and talk about these things, but we also should talk about what's working first, right? Not, we didn't get that client deal. Let's all sit in a conference room and cry about it and yell and scream at who made a mistake or who didn't do this right. Let's talk about the two we did land. Why
Yeah.
did we land them? What did we do good? How can we build on that? Right? Then talk about how we could get better in other ways. But,
Yeah.
it's so important that we are focused on how we're winning, how we're doing good, what our strengths are as our main focus. Yes, we have to get better. Yes, we have to have tough conversations. Yes, we have to review what maybe went wrong. But when we start off with that negativity of like, the whole meeting's about how this one little mistake, and you've been in those meetings. Some manager is pissed off about some stupid thing that happened, and we talk about it for 45 minutes. And then for 15 minutes, we talk about the good stuff. And the good stuff is like this big, it's huge. And that little thing was like nothing. And yet that was the thing we talked about in the whole meeting. And nobody wants to be in that culture. Nobody wants to be there.
Yeah, so this is like life lessons to just be better people, just be a better person. Use this also in your personal life, like within your families, with your friends. But it's funny because I have a background in design, went to Parsons School of Design, and that was one of the first lessons. Like this is how you give constructive criticism. So you start always with what works. Because if you go in too hard on the negativity, you really, I mean, on the negative aspects of anything, you really just like block any type of innovation in your business whatsoever. So yeah, I could probably squeeze a fourth one out of you, but if you want to know more, you can get his book. He has the full 7 pillars, and we're excited to hear about the next book that's coming out. But just to wrap up, because we are running out of time, why don't you tell them about the generous gift that you're giving our audience.
Yeah, and we mentioned a little bit about remote work. So I have a ebook that I'm giving away for free to everybody, and it's the 5 things that every leader needs to know on how to manage a remote team. A lot of really great kind of impactful tips and tricks that you can use. So if you have anybody you're managing, whether it's everybody or maybe only one person's remote, it will really help you. So you can go to the link and you can download it, and hopefully it works. And if you need any other help, I'm always happy to connect with people on social, on LinkedIn. I'm on every platform, but I'm really busy on LinkedIn and TikTok. So if you hang out either one of those places, feel free to connect with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, I do have a surprise question. um,
Sure.
but I wanted to just say thank you for being on the show. Thank you for your time. And also, I've been saying this to other speakers as well, but I just feel like it's really important to take a moment to acknowledge you for who you are, let alone the show, right? Let alone the fact that you're sharing your knowledge with us and that you're writing a book and that you have all this great stuff to share with the audience. But just for you showing up the way you've shown up in your whole entire career to get to this point. So thank you for being you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So surprise question. All right, there's like a little bit of a story that goes along with it. So I'm prepping you. I've been asking all of the speakers. My mission is to encourage other entrepreneurs to reach out, network more, because I really believe that if you learn through other people's experiences, you accelerate to where you need to go faster, and it's not as lonely, right? So this platform Gain and these shows are specifically geared to help with that. But I also thought on reflection that it might be a good idea to demonstrate by leading. And so I thought, why don't we test the 6 degrees of separation theory? So I've been asking all of the speakers, who do you have in your phone book that you could call today? You don't have to call them, okay? You don't have to call them right now. But do you have someone in your phone book that you could call who could potentially put me in touch with someone who could put me in touch with someone who knows Elon Musk? So our audience is like on a 90-day sprint to increase their numbers, rock out this year. I'm on a 90-day sprint to get on a call with Elon Musk. So one, I want to prove the 6 degrees of separation is possible. It may not be. It could totally fall on my face, but I think that there's hope here. And I also want I want to have him on the next series, because we're talking about risk, and he said something about AI, and I just want to unravel the fear behind it.
I would absolutely there's probably 10 or 12 people in my phone book that probably could be 6 steps or less away from Musk.
Cool.
I guess I would question whether or not you really want to have that conversation, because I think he's kind of I think he's kind of having a little bit of a difficult time right now. I'm not sure he's quite as acutely focused as he once was. I think X is sort of dragging him a little bit. It's interesting to kind of watch him. He seems a lot less articulate to me these days. I don't know if that's just it's clearly subjective, but anyways, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say anything that might tarnish my chances of getting a call with him.
Yeah. He's clearly not going to be on with me because I just tarnished him, but that's okay. I don't think he cares what I have to think.
No, but here's the thing, right? So I thought this would be a really fun, just something fun to do, number one. And two, if it really works out, like everyone who's a participant in this, everyone who's been a speaker or, who's sort of in some way or another contributed to this, even the VIP members of the show, they get to be invited to the potential virtual call with Elon Musk and like all the people who contributed to that. I think it's just a fun thing to do and nice to see.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Right?
Hey, you're manifesting, right? You're putting it out into the universe. So I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can talk about that after. If you want to know, get into the VIP. That's where we'll reveal the progress and the story behind this and how this unravels. But otherwise, reach out to Chris and make sure you get the free gift that he's offered. And again, it was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.